everyone, and welcome to our first ever virtual First Friday Art Talk. My name is Hisela, and I'm a librarian at the Salinas Public Library and the host for today's event. Our First Friday Art Talk will feature two local artists. Each one will have half an hour, which includes a presentation about their artwork and time for questions from the audience afterwards. Our first artist is jewelry designer Ellia Borba. So I first discovered her work on Instagram when I was browsing online researching my latest COVID-19 weekend hobby, which was wire-wrapped crystals. So her work stood out from the rest because of its level of detail and complexity. She's a full-time student at Cabrillo College and the small business owner of Ocean Kissed Crystals. So please help me welcome Ellia.
Hi guys! I'm super happy and honored to be part of this little event, and I'm grateful to share my artwork with all of you. I feel like I've always kind of been a creative type of person. I felt like I've always needed something to do with my hands. I remember when I was a young person, I would be in class, I would be drawing all day, I would get in trouble for drawing. I would have these little Zentangle style like mandala doodles. And so I still draw a little bit, but now I mostly get that drawing out when I draw my business cards because I make them individually, which is also a fun little art project to do because I often find myself going to creation as a way of meditation, and the repetitive design and pattern is a really good way to kind of turn my thoughts off and just kind of dive into the creation of it all. So I think I'll begin sharing my presentation. So this is my wire-wrapped jewelry journey. Everything I make is created with love and intention. Every design that I make is inspired by the ocean and nature around me and the beautiful trees and redwoods that we live around in California. So I first started doing my jewelry in about 2016. I was introduced in a actually kind of traumatic time in my life, and a lot was going on emotionally. I used my friend's wired supplies and tools, and I just made this little dinky, kind of messily made pendant. And from there, I was traveling with my mom, and we were on Kauai, and I went to this jewelry store, and they had tools and wire and a bunch of little crystals and stones. I was like, hey, I could use that to create. So I think the first time I started wire wrapping was actually like on the beach in Kauai, and I had all my supplies with me. I had this little bag of stones that I bought. And so here on the left is the first things that I started creating with it was like stainless steel wire. It was a lot of fun though. They're different from what I make now, but I think we all begin somewhere. We all have a lot of progress, and I'm grateful that I can show all this progress in my journey of creating. And so in, I think about 2017 or 2018, I started diving into like taking care of myself more with food and what I'm consuming, like what I'm watching, who I'm surrounding myself with. And this is when I began to take care of myself more and use my energy as something I could share with the world in a positive way. So the things on the right in the middle, these are some of the things that I like, spirals and patterns that I saw in my life. I would kind of create into little kind of more dinky little jewelry things, but I'm still kind of proud to see where I've come from. In 2018, I took a jewelry class at Cabrillo. I don't think I would have done it without the help of my friends and my family getting me into it. And I took a class, it was a small metal and jewelry class with Angela Gleason. And she's a super sweet lady. I definitely recommend her if you're ever in that space of being a student. So taking this class, we just dove into any way you could create with metals. It was a small metal class. I think the first project we worked on was actually wire. At that point, I had kind of focused out of wire wrapping, and I was not creating as much like physically. I was more drawing. So getting into this class and just diving into it and spending a lot of time playing with these materials handed to me was a really inspiring way to dive into my work and create. We did a lot of soldering. So with a torch and metal and heating it up and connecting the pieces together. And I really loved that, and that was a lot of fun. But I became really drawn to doing things that I could bring with me everywhere. So I got really into this chainmail, and it's basically like they're little jump rings individually cut with this teeny tiny little saw blade, and I would cut them piece by piece, and I would bend them and kind of weave them together. And I would start with this small piece, and I would make it into this long chain. And I think this was one of my final projects. And that was another way of the repetitive pattern and getting my energy out in a really healthy way, I feel. This is one of my final projects on the top right here. And it was actually a headpiece. And I made a few more headpieces like that, but I think this is my favorite one because it had the little stars. And those stars were actually soldered together as well, so there's no opening in it. It's all soldered and heated up and kind of pieced together. So yeah, that was my first experience in a jewelry class. And it's actually, thinking back, I would love to do this class again because there's so much more I could work with now because I've worked with metal so much in the past 2 years or so. So I would love to go back and visit this class again. And then on the bottom right, these are just some examples of the jewelry fabrication that I did of cutting out the shapes, polishing them, and setting stones like this tiger's eye. And that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. But again, it was just something drew me to creating wherever I went. So that's why I got into more wire jewelry. And I think after the class, when it was after finals, and I was like, man, I miss creating. I miss having this outlet. So I bought some of my own wire. I had my tools from my trip from Hawaii 2 years prior, and I started creating more. I really like butterflies, so I started making these little butterfly pendants or wall hangings. I would give them out to my friends a lot, and that was a lot of fun. And I think one of my first pendants was, I don't know if you guys can see my arrow, but the bottom left, the little white and orangish stone, that was one of my first pendants that I made with some stainless steel wire. These are called cabochons, by the way, the polished stone. So setting the cabochon in wire like that, this was one of my first pieces. On the right side of the screen is the creations that I started making when I just was really into it. And I was just doing it every day or whenever I had free time away from class. I started getting into more of the weaving instead of just setting it like the bottom pictures are. I started doing these really fun, intricate weaves, and I would put them around the stone and create a bail. So the bail is the part that you hang the necklace from, the part on the top. So I got really into this style, and then I was like, hey, I'm making so much of this, I can share these with other people. And that was a really cool kind of revelation for me. And my friends and my family was like, you're making so much, you got to do it. You got to go out there, start sharing your work with others. And it really inspired me because I'm a person that I need that little push from people around me because I often won't do it by myself. So I was really grateful for my friends and my family getting me into that and helping me spread my jewelry and making more and diving into more ways to create. So the piece on the left, was the first piece that I made. And this one's super close to my heart because it's in a different style than the previous pieces that I made. It's in a frame style. I'll dive into it more later in the presentation, but it's basically a frame and you attach all the different weaves onto one frame and you set the cabochon in the middle. But this was the first time that I was like, whoa, I'm changing it up. I'm creating something new. So these three pieces were some of the first pieces where I was like, whoa, this is cool. I can keep on going. I can change my style up and I can keep on creating in different ways. Nothing's going to stop me from creating something new. And the earrings in the middle I actually gave to my best friend. It was my first pair of earrings that I made because she was the one that was like, hey, make these, make them in this style. You can do it. Make them for me. I want these. I'm like, okay, Heather, I'll make them for you. So yeah, I was really grateful to have her in this process too. She also helped me kind of figure out not what's trendy, but what people like, I guess. Oh, I like more wire in this. Oh, I like this style instead of this. So at least that was her preference, but it was helpful to have that second pair of eyes to help me through that. From there, I developed Ocean Kiss Crystals, which is my small business now, and I sell over Instagram, which is easier for me, and it's more personal level, I feel like. So yeah, I create amulets, I create earrings and rings, and I feel like there's always an endless possibility of what's out there for me to create. I'm thinking of creating some wall hangings in the future. But yeah, these are some of these three pictures are some of my favorite ones that I've made because it took me so much trial and error and weaving something and then it didn't come out right, so unweaving it or cutting it and doing it again. So these pieces especially were part of my journey of figuring out what works and what doesn't. I just wanted to highlight I love this form of creation because I can do it anywhere. The reason I have the name Ocean Kissed Crystals is because I love creating at the beach so often. I'm so often at the beach. Like, I will do my homework at the beach, so I can create at the beach too. Also, my favorite wire to work with is copper, and copper is easily patinaed, so it easily changes color when it's in different like salty or humid environments. The reason my business name is Ocean Kissed Crystals is because the ocean sprays on my creation and kisses it with its magical properties and changes it over time too. So that, I think, is really powerful. My way of making my pendants is I have this little, it's almost like a CD package. I found it at a thrift store, and it's really great because it has everything that I carry my metal in, and you can see in the plastic piece, you can see actually the piece that I'm currently working on, and I can keep all my supplies and my pliers. And I have these little tiny tweezers, and they're not even meant for wire wrapping. They're actually they're like for your eyebrows, but they're so tiny that they really help me create. And I've started using this measuring tape to help me measure out the amount of wire that I use when I'm making custom pieces. So yeah, those are kind of the materials that I use. And I also have the little CD album, whatever it is, I don't know. I also got this from Goodwill or thrift store or something. And this is the little one that I bring to the beach when I'm creating. I really like copper because it actually has some healing benefits, especially if you wear it as a young person. It can make arthritis not happen as soon in life. So I have some friends who actually, she had arthritis as a young adult, which is pretty serious. And she wore copper jewelry often in her fingers and her wrist to help heal those areas, because it's great for alleviating joint pain in targeted areas. And a lot of people they don't like copper as much, I found, just talking to people. And they say this because it turns your skin green. But actually, I learned that when it turns your skin green, it's because it's working with your body, and your body is absorbing that mineral and taking it in, taking its benefits in. So I thought that was really interesting. And that's why I promote copper use so much, at least when I'm creating and talking to people about it. I also just started recently using silver because my best friend Heather was like, make me this pendant. I want it in silver. It has to go with my outfits. Like, you have to use silver. So I just recently started using silver more. And you can see actually in my little carrier case below the red Christmas thing is the frame of her pendant being created. It's in silver, and it has a little flower of life on it under there. So she's kind of pushed me to make more and spread out in the materials I'm using too. I also really like the way I create my jewelry because I can bring it anywhere. And this summer, especially since it was quarantine, I went out and I went road tripping. Actually, I had to bring Heather up to Portland for her new schooling. So on the way there, we went to Mount Shasta, and Mount Shasta is one of my favorite, like, very high energy, high vibrational vortexes, because it has so much fresh air, fresh mountain, beautiful spring air, but it has fresh spring water coming everywhere out of the earth there. So there's this place called Headwaters, and it's one of the main springs where people get their water at. And the picture of me holding those cabochons is at Headwaters, cleansing all those crystals with the spring water. And I think I like to cleanse my crystals personally because it heals them. So I'm really into knowing where my products came from and understanding the journey of how they got there. So I know that all these crystals and all the wire I'm using, it came from the earth. Someone mined it, someone transported it, someone shipped it to me. And I think cleansing my crystals takes off some of that possible negative energy that has been put onto it. Because I think just like human beings, just like we absorb the energy around us. And I think that all these objects, these crystals, they all absorb the energy around us too. And so I think it's important to cleanse your crystals. You can also do it with like sunlight and sage or smoke or any of these different things, but I really love to go to Mount Shasta and do it. And actually the picture of me sitting right there is me with my toothbrush and getting some dirt off of one of my crystals that was in the dirt in Mount Shasta. It was kind of funny. So this is a frame style of how I create my pendants. I use a frame and I attach all the weaves onto it, and I attach all the pieces onto it. And I usually don't sketch out all my pieces, but this one was actually for a customer for a client who's come back to me. So I sketched out the piece and made it into something that they wanted. So I worked together with their vision and made it to what they wanted. So this is just the process of that piece. And I actually, with silver, I've been making it with copper first because it's so easy to mess up on with silver. So I make a lot of my items in copper and I redo it until I like the product. And then I put it on and set it into silver. And then these are the different frame styles, just examples of them. So I have lotuses that I really like, and the flower of life, or I call it flower of love. That's a really powerful symbol to me. And so that's you can kind of see how they're set onto the pendant there, but that's what I use to stabilize them. And then this was one of my favorite pendants, and it had a lot of trial and error with it because it was such a lot of stones in it. And the third picture, it kind of looks like a gecko to me, but it was when I was trying to set these stones and I just couldn't figure it out. And I set them so many times, and then I finally figured out a different way to set them, which is the fourth picture on the right. And it just reminds me of how focused you have to be and how in the right mindset you have to be to create and without messing up. And it's a fun process, I think. And so here's just the end of this piece and adding little details and braids onto them to create the final product. And then this is my other style of woven pendants, which I think people like. Some people like this more just because it's a lot more simple. But this is a really fun, repetitive, meditative process for me as well that I like to do. And then these are just some examples in the customs that I've made. So this is actually just for one client. Back in March, they requested some moonstone pendants, and those are on the left. Yeah, left. And then this past month, they were like, hey, we really like your work. And so I made them some sunstone pendants, which are like the opposite sun and moon. So that was a lot of fun for me to create. And these kind of show me how I've evolved as an artist just in this short time. So I like looking back at those and seeing them and sharing my work with others. So yeah. Each one of my pendants, when someone adopts them, the adoption fee, I give 10% back to the organization of their choice. And that kind of ties into the sustainability aspect of my vision and how I want to give back. And then that's kind of the end of my presentation, but thank you for letting me be here. And yeah, I guess I'll go to the questions now. Thank you, guys.
I have a question about the weaving or braiding styles. Did you teach those to yourself, or how did you develop those?
That's a good question. I kind of just play around with wire. I mean, I've always liked doing, I used to make little bracelets when I was younger and I would braid them. So I tried to do this with wire, and I tried to make little different patterns with wire, and it's kind of just all experimental. Yeah, it's fun to play around with. But then, yeah, whatever I like, I just start incorporating them into my style of work and add them on pendants. So, yeah.
I am wondering if the work is really beautiful, and I love both the copper and the silver. And I guess I had a question about so the name of your business has crystals in it, and a lot of what I've seen is crystals, but do you work with stones as well, or just crystals? And I was wondering why.
I would say I call them all crystals, but they are kind of just like gemstones. And I like to work a lot with moonstone, labradorite, and opals. So I've kind of went towards that route. But I'm actually getting into more faceted stones. So the stones that have the cuts on the outside that make them more shiny. I don't know if you guys, like a diamond ring, those are faceted. So I'm kind of getting into that. So those are different types of stones that I work with. But yeah, I've also messed with like sea glass too, and that's kind of fun. So yeah, it's kind of whatever. If someone just gives me this and say, hey, wrap this, like I'll do it. It's just fun to practice and create in different ways with different materials. So yeah.
Well, those pieces are so intricate and beautiful, and I wonder, like the most intricate piece you have made and how long it took.
So I don't even know if I could put an amount of time in it. It definitely takes a lot of energy to create. I actually use a drill to make those round coily things. I use a drill to make them because like by hand it would take me like 3 hours, but with a drill it takes me like 30 minutes or so. It takes me definitely, including the design and creation and like little detailed process, I think it would definitely take me like 2 weeks to fully get a vision out if a customer wanted it. But I think it depends. Like if I put all my time and energy into it, I could probably make one in like a couple days, but it really depends like my mindset and like all that too. But yeah, I don't know if I could really put a time limit or time amount on it because it does take a lot of energy, but it's so fun to see the final outcome. So yeah.
Does anyone have any last questions before we move on to our next artist? Okay, so before I introduce our next artist, I would like to talk a little bit about an upcoming program we have. It's our Make Your Vote Count virtual workshops. So we know that with the pandemic this year, there's a lot of questions or worries about the election. So we decided to go straight to the source for answers. So at the workshop, you'll have a chance to speak to Monterey County elections officials and get answers on what to expect at your polling place, when and where to return your ballot, details about mailing your ballot, and any other questions you may have. So we will be having one workshop in English on Wednesday, October 14th from 3:30 to 4:15, and another one in Spanish on Thursday, October 15th from 5 to 5:45 p.m. If anyone is interested, I'll include links to our website calendar, which has all of the details on the chat. And I'll also stick around at the end of this event in case anyone has any questions about this workshop or any other upcoming workshops. So now on to our second artist of this afternoon, which is Mai Ryuno. So Mai is an interdisciplinary artist, meaning she does social practice, installation, and performance art. Her artwork is playful. It's a mix of colors, patterns, and mediums, from anything traditional like printmaking, drawing, painting, and sculpture to non-traditional like food, salt water, and even rain. So please help me welcome Mai.
Hi, hello, my name is Mai Ryuno. Nice to meet you. First of all, I wanted to thank Salinas Public Library for the invitation to share my story with the public. It's been really great opportunity for me to look back at what I've done as an artist and other things are related to my art over last close to 20 years. And it's been a great pleasure to kind of wrapping my head around history of myself. So thank you so much for that. And also thank you everyone for being here. And also thank you, Ellia, going before me, I asked, and really interesting to hear her story that's also related to my story, such as community college, local environment, the ocean influences of creativity and things like that. So that was great pleasure being here. So this is a picture from one of my performances. I will talk about that a little later. But before I'm gonna start actually talking about art, I wanna go back to the time in 1995. The change that I made in this story was because I wanted to relate this story to what we're dealing with now, the pandemic and the other social hardships that are an important part of my art making as a social practice artist. And in 1995, I was about to graduate from high school. And my hometown is called Fukuoka City in Japan. And that time, I decided to move to a different city called Kyoto to attend a university. In 1995, what happened was the huge earthquake hit Kobe, which is one of the closest cities to Kyoto. I went to the area a few weeks after the earthquake and saw all the communities and buildings, homes, things like that were destroyed and people were devastated. But as a young person, high school student, I couldn't do anything really to help, but just seeing what happened in those communities. Of course, because of the such huge disaster happened to the area, some people in my hometown were concerned about my move to the area after my graduation from high school. Yet I just went ahead and moved to Kyoto and went to Doshisha University in Kyoto to study English. So at the time, I wasn't majoring in art or taking art so seriously, but when I was about to graduate from the university, I decided to move to the United States to practice my language skills and also study art. I had an opportunity to study at Amherst College in Massachusetts for summer, which led me to really be confident to move to the country that is outside of my home country. So going back there and looking at life from then till now, I found three key fundamental life events or keywords that I influenced how I've done and do my art now, and there are. One is relocation. That was the first relocation of my living place from Fukuoka to Kyoto. The second is uncontrollable situations like disasters and other things. And the last keyword is meeting new people. So when I was doing research on the place area in the United States, I will study art. I Googled, or at the time I Yahooed online and found Monterey Peninsula College. And I decided to move to the Monterey Peninsula as my first place outside of my home, Japan, to study art. During that time, I found myself really enjoy making printmaking, which brought me also back to the memory of my as a young student in Japan, I learned how to do woodblock prints. So here are some prints that I made when I was at MPC. The first two pieces are woodblock prints of my home, Fukuoka, and the city I live, Kyoto. And this is the ocean and Big Sur. First two are woodblock prints, then this one is called the monotype prints that I made. My original plan to stay here was a couple of years. And when I left home, I said to my mom that I'm going to be back in a couple of years. I just, do some art study and come back. But during my time at MPC, one of the faculty members, Robin Smith, who is retired now, suggested me to apply for graduate school. And I did, and I admitted to the graduate school at the San Francisco Art Institute. So I extended my study in the United States for a few more years to attend that school. This is actually the street where I lived, and I even moved from one place to one block further from there. Let's see. So in San Francisco, I picked the major in printmaking because I really enjoyed making prints and started making more prints at SFAI. I was interested in this idea of airplanes and power poles or power lines because airplanes reminded me of my home in Japan. I lived near the airport, which once used by military activities. So that reminded me of World War II. Also, I moved to Monterey. I forgot to mention this. I moved to Monterey in 2002, related to the disaster, what happened in 2001 in New York, 9/11. That image of airplanes hit those twin towers was really shocking. And again, that was a year before I moved to the United States. And people were concerned about my move, yet I moved here. And still kind of the image was hanging around. Also, World War II was a big event in Japan. And by living near the airport, when I was a kid, I used to have nightmares when I heard airplane going by. What if those airplanes drop bombs here in my home? I will die. So those are the things around airplanes. And lines reminded me of the time of the disasters. A lot of phone calls were made and dropped calls and lost a way to make sure that our loved ones were safe or what's going on in that areas. So those are two, also another thing actually, positive side of those. Airplanes are what I took to come to this country to make my dream of becoming an artist true. And also lines connected me to back home to my parents and friends. At the time, there was no internet really. Internet exists, but no Zoom or Skype or anything. So I used to make phone calls from landline and pay phones. So those power poles kind of made me think of connections between me and other people in other places once I lived. So I was making prints of those images at San Francisco Art Institute that's called Maple. Then I was introduced to more contemporary art practice and became interested in installation art and performance art. Started experimenting with my art in that areas. Still, lines and airplanes are really big interests of mine. This is one of the first installation piece I made at the one of the galleries in San Francisco Art Institute studio. And this had some paper cut airplanes connected with ribbons related to one of the prints that I made. That paper cuts became bigger installation. This was installed in the gallery in down south near Los Angeles with hundreds of paper cut airplanes with the inspiration from the story of Southern cranes in Hiroshima. And I titled this piece Silent Wishes to kind of heal my childhood memory of nightmare, the 9/11 incident and things like that, and create hope. But then it came a time for a change. I'm the kind of person I couldn't do the same thing over and over. I need to change things here and there. And I went back to my life story of being in two countries, Japan and the United States, especially homes. Home became my theme for my artwork. The home that at the time I was living in San Francisco. So San Francisco as home, and also Fukuoka as where I grew up. When I was thinking about it, I remember it was such an important part of my life to socialize with people over food table. So I started collecting stains when I went out for dinners with my large drawing paper with me, and I placed on a table and collected stains, and collected also itemized receipt as a way of showing them as stains as paintings on paper or drawings on paper, and those food and wine and everything, grease and everything as a medium to make those paintings or drawings, whatever you want to call it. So those are a couple of examples of the stain paintings. Oh, the text are lost. Then this is a show I did for my graduation. It was my self-portrait in a way that socializing over food table was really big part of my life as I grew up in the city of Fukuoka is known for good food. People love going out, hanging out, drinking, eating. San Francisco was similar to me when I lived there. So created the situation where I made a dress that became dress / tablecloth. So the front of the dress was connected to the tablecloth, actually one solid piece of fabric. And the back of the dress was attached to 600 spools of thread. So I tied myself into the situation and served meal to guests. Whoever wanted to join, they were able to sit and have some food and drinks with other guests and me, and shared memories. The show itself had about a week at the gallery. So one night, first night was the performance, and the rest of the period of the show, I showed the stains and everything else except for live things as an installation piece. So I graduated from the school, and I thought I might have to go back to Japan because I was on a student visa, but I was lucky enough to get a full-time opportunity in the public education department as an assistant director. And again, extended my stay in the United States on now a work visa. The department offered art programs in underserved communities in the San Francisco Bay Area. And there I was kind of exposed to socially engaged art practice, and started kind of bringing that practice into my art. I hosted again some meals with people, invited people to share memories, time, experience, create community around that meals and art. This one I called it Bubble Lounge. Made the this is a courtyard of San Francisco Art Institute, and that ground is really hard with bricks or tiles or something. So I laid that bubble wrap on the ground so that people could comfortably sit and hang out as an installation. Also, this was a part of art festival that some of the students organized. This was a night view of that, had lights. So it was great opportunity to live in San Francisco, which reminded me also of my hometown Fukuoka in different ways. But again, uncontrollable situation happened. I lost my job, which is not only did I lose job, but also I lost my status, finally lost status to live in the United States. So I was forced to move back to Japan, yet it was just really sad news, and I needed to change my feelings around it. I still had 3 months after I was told that I was going to be laid off. And this opportunity came to do some art in a gallery at the school. And I decided to move my office into the gallery, meet new people, ask them to write about themselves on postcards that I pre-created. I had a blank postcard with my name and address on them and stamps. and then ask people who visited, mostly to see Diego Rivera mural in the gallery, to write about themselves. Surprisingly, I collected 80 plus postcards during 5 days of sitting in the gallery. And surprisingly, a lot of people wrote about their personal hardship, like parents' divorce, loved ones' deaths, things like that. And I totally appreciated their sharing experience. And also that kind of made my feelings better about my situation, that I was about to have to move back to Japan. So at the end of 2010, on December 31st, I left San Francisco to go back to Japan. And on the day, I had 80 plus postcards that I made as response to all the postcards are collected, individually different. And I mailed them on the day of my departure from this country. And arrived in Japan on the first day of 2011. I had no plan what to do in Japan, but I knew that I wanted to do some art. I met new people again not too long after I moved back to my hometown and started a thing called apple pie meeting every Wednesday. We made apple pies, baked apple pies, and eat apple pies together. And again, sharing stories, time, memories, things. Then I was asked, because I lived in the United States, some people thought that I knew how to make apple pies that are a big thing in the US. So people asked me to teach how to make apple pies. So I brought my background being in education into my artwork and combined those as my social practice artwork. So this is one of the apple pie workshop. And into 2011 was another big year for Japan to experience big disasters. Huge earthquake and tsunamis hit northeastern part of Japan. I was living far from there, so I wasn't directly affected by the disasters yet. Definitely, I was affected mentally by such just devastating conditions that people up north were facing. So I decided to move to the area about 9 months later and started working as an educator for nonprofit organization. Since I especially worked with youth when I worked at SFAI, I did I was involved in some new and innovative educational programs to help really look back at the communities themselves, families, and help them recover of their regions. These are some pictures of the community that I lived and students working in different projects. In 2013, I came back. Oh, it's 5 minutes left, I realize. I came back to Monterey and started using the experience of living in Tohoku to my art and making seawater paintings by taking water from the bay and made paintings of the pictures that I took when I was in Japan. And this was a video I won't show so much, but then I started working with waves to make paintings, actually going to the beach with watercolor on the paper and made paintings to make some installation piece with the paintings that I made with water, thinking about what still people are dealing with in Japan, but also a new home that I came back in the Monterey Peninsula. In the meantime, I started teaching at Hartnell College and MPC, and I've given a lot of community-based collaborative projects to my students in drawing classes and others. Also, I started teaching in summer city planning at this program called Y Plan at UC Berkeley. 200 students every year from that region that I live of Tohoku for them to learn city planning, to apply what they learned to rebuilding of the community in Tohoku from the disaster. So we did an installation, some work on the spot. Quickly, so this is the beginning of Playful Grant. I received a grant from Arts Council for Monterey County to host community-based event at the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History. Because of the Natural History Museum, I decided to make some soft sculptures that represent the underwater world of the Monterey Bay. And they're interactive, so people are able to sit and hug and touch artwork. And also I collaborated with musicians, artists, local artists, other creative individuals to make that. I'm holding this fish, and if you have known me for some time, these colorful fishes were born as a part of this exhibit. Now it's became kind of part of my signature thing. And this is my art studio, Playful Grant in New Monterey. It's been 3 years since I opened. I have hosted a lot of workshops there, also community events, collaborated with not only artists or organizations, but also farmers, engineers, local business owners to showcase their creation as well as artwork. These are performances that I've done in the community to create vibrant, resilient, and inclusive community. Most of them are interactive performances. This was the last performance I did at Monterey Museum of Art when people touch my hand. That activates the light of the dress and light it up, and lights start moving, changing colors, things like that. Was right before the COVID, so touching hand was kind of weird already. So I happened to make the dress covering over my hands, so people were touching with fabric between my hand and theirs, and did that performance. So that's the last performance. So I made this story in relationship to the COVID. So what's now is I've been making playful performance videos because I think playfulness can help us be resilient during the hardship, make things a little lighter every day, more joyful than just kind of being all, filled with some bad feelings. So been making those videos by playing with my colorful fishes and posting them on YouTube and sharing them on social media and such. I think that's it from me. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mai. That was a wonderful presentation. I know it's 5:30 already, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand.
Yeah, I've really appreciated hearing about just your whole history, because some of that I was aware of, but other things I wasn't aware of. And just your discussion of the 3 things that define you and define your work, and then your progression through these difficult times. I guess my question is, because now we're in another of those pivotal moments, and so what kind of new direction is that taking you in, or maybe you don't know yet?
Yeah, No, yeah, I really just looking around and how difficult and heavy that the air is. It's been since the pandemic and other, social political hardship or difficulties that we're facing. I still wanted to provide some joy and playfulness and create through creative activities. Now, like my performances before the pandemic were all interactive and more. I always invite the audience to participate in my artwork to complete the work. However, it becomes difficult. It's a lot of things like this talk is online, and trying to figure out how this interaction between people through online, not just to, this is interactive, yes, but even more meaningful way that we can really connect. Social media is supposed to connect us, but also works as kind of a way to separate us as well. So how can really bring people and community together to make community first, then the big society and world together for better for all is definitely always being kind of my theme to, or my concept idea of making art. Yet the specifics I'm trying to figure out as I practice.
Jees asks, what has been the most challenging aspect to being an artist?
Oh, financial? Yeah, I'm picking up. So I'm lucky enough to have some teaching assignments. I'm a part-time faculty member at Art now. I also have taught at MPC, not teaching there at this moment. A lot of art programs being cut. Colleges hire more part-time than full-time. Educational institutions having hardship, as I am a social practice artist as well as an educator. And education brings more money to my life income, yet even that's very difficult for me. So that's why I open Playful Grant as a business, so I can bring some income from making products, doing designs.
How do you plan to participate in shifting that balance of equity and the importance of the kind of social impact projects that you've been doing your whole life?
Oh, that's such a hard question. I need I need a long conversation with you to maybe brainstorm and find an answer to that. I wanted to say that even though I keep saying it's really difficult time, and my life as an artist has some difficulties, including some things that I mentioned. I am like with you, hopeful that, or hope that, this pandemic and other issues came out in this time will actually make more people look at what worked and what didn't work in the past and make improvement on the areas that haven't worked really well for majority or for all of us. So how can I contribute to the action? It's really difficult question I keep asking myself, and I feel like I've been just kind of doing things as I go. I'm not really good at planning. As you can see, my talk became longer than I intended. So it's really that I'm with it, in it, and really open my eyes, ears, everything to what's happening, and whenever possible, I try to use my creativity to make better world, little thing at a time. That's, I think, I've been doing. Big impact will be great, but one person can only do so much. So collaboration is really big part of my work, that I believe one person can only do so much, but if we collaborate for purpose, big purpose, goal, we can achieve something bigger than one person can achieve.
Piggybacking off of financials being the biggest hardship of an artist, I believe she just launched her shop on her Playful Ground website. So I did include a link to that. And I also included a link to Ellia's Instagram, where she does take custom orders and she does do posts of her work and what's available for sale. So make sure to check that out. In the interest of time, since we've already gone a little bit over, I'd like to thank both of our artists for speaking at today's event. I'd also like to thank all who joined us today. Our First Friday Art Talk is on a monthly basis, so if you enjoyed it, please make sure to come back next month on November 6th, same time, 4:30 to 5:30. We have a couple more artists lined up, including an underwater photographer, so please make sure to check out our website and Facebook for more details. Thank you so much once again.
Right. Bye-bye.
Nice to meet you.